mail.
You're all set? Okay. All right. Moving on then. We just approved the consent agenda, and moving on to item number 7 now. And actually for the next couple items are policies that we discussed in more detail at the previous meeting, the COW meeting 2 weeks ago. And the first one of those that we have considered tonight is approval of the computer and internet use policy. And Joe.
So the policy is pretty much as it was at the COW meeting, but the one thing that we talked about changing was on the last page, page 15, under the electronic user agreement, to rephrase that one bullet point, so instead it says storing data on library computers is prohibited. It's just much more clear.
Right.
And that's it. Otherwise, it is the same as you had saw it before.
Thank you for making that change.
Any questions? Then would someone like to make a motion to approve the...
Question.
Okay.
Where would a user, someone coming in the library wants to use our computer, where would they find this information?
So any policies we have, first of all, they're on our computers, or I'm sorry, on our website. The user agreement will pop down when they go to use the computer.
Okay.
Not the whole policy, I don't think. Andrew's not here, but I think just the electronic user agreement
Okay.
will pop up, which kind of summarizes things. But also at all the service desks, we have policies in binders. So if a patron came up and said, could I see your computer use policy? We'd be able
Or
to provide
whatever.
it. Or we'd be able to show it to them online.
Okay.
So
I'm guessing many will not know that there is a policy.
I think,
Or you think that the pop-up, the user agreement will indicate that that's the case?
I think the user agreement brings it to their attention that there are some guidelines for using the computers. And that's pretty much all they need to, I mean, they shouldn't have to read the entire policy just to go on and check email. But
Well, you're right,
if
yeah.
we see, if they're misusing the computers or they're questioning something, then we have policy to back us up.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Then would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the computer and internet use policy as presented.
Motion by trustee Deachman
I'll second.
and a second by trustee Fasano. Any discussion? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the internet use policy is approved. Moving on, another policy, a brand new one for us, is a notary services policy.
So we talked about a few changes at the COW meeting. One is bolding, 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, documents to be notarized must be signed in the presence of a notary. So that is now going to be bolded. All this yellow will be removed when we put it on the website. And then we separated notarize I-9. The library does not notarize I-9 forms. We moved that to its own line. And I actually added, just to reiterate, what we cannot do is provide witnesses when required. We mentioned it earlier, but I thought it might be beneficial to have it also listed there of what we cannot do.
Easy to see.
Yeah.
Any questions on this policy?
How often do we get them requesting staff be witnesses?
I don't know, fairly.
It's semi-frequent.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's never the staff member actually notarizing the
course.
document, but it does, I would say it's less than half the time, but it's not uncommon.
And this is something that we might want to post our policy at the desk because it's short and there's, it's going to take some time for people to get used to the idea of we can't be your witnesses, So we'll probably post this policy at the adult services desk all over the place.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make- Yeah, but I'll make a motion to approve the notary services policy.
Second.
Motion by trustee Deitchman and a second by trustee Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the notary services policy is approved. And one more policy tonight, number 9 on the agenda, the gifts and donation policy.
So again, this policy has not changed much since the Cal meeting. I did add in the first paragraph, whenever we refer to Batavia Public Library as the library. And does that, I think Jennifer, you had mentioned that takes care of that. Oftentimes when we refer to Batavia Public Library, not just in policy, but in other written materials, the library, we always capitalize L, but this way we're stating it more clearly in the policy. So, and then, in my director's report, which we'll talk about in a minute, I did hear back from our attorneys about the Library Foundation. We'll talk about that. So otherwise, the policy is pretty much as it was at the Cal meeting with just that one addition.
I'll make a motion to approve the gifts and donation policy.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Collada and a second by trustee Larson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that policy is approved. Okay, number 10, financial reports.
Okay, so if you will turn, let's see. So as we talked about in December, we've already received pretty much 100% of the tax revenue that we anticipated receiving. So let's take a little bit of a look at just the expenses in the library fund. We're mostly 50% or over, which is where we should be 7 months into the fiscal year. A few areas where we're a little bit lower, but sometimes it's because those payments come towards the end of the fiscal year. So I'm not concerned that, that we'll be way under in our databases. But we're pretty much where we need to be for library materials, both print and digital, and databases. Let's see what else. Oh, and then with our personnel expenses on page 20, we are at about, we're 61%, which is about where we need to be this time of year. And I just wanted to point out that in the far left column, we're under approved budget. So the personnel expenses, our total in our operating fund is only 53%, which is a good low number, because if you may recall in the standards for Illinois libraries, the guidelines are that you don't exceed 70% of your total personnel costs, which includes your benefits and all that kind of stuff, not just salaries. And even with our benefits, we're only at 53%. So that's a nice low number, depending on how you look at it. Just kidding. And then operating expenses, we're around 40% so far of the approved budget for this year. So we're hovering between 40 and 60% in almost all of our categories, and that's to be expected, and that's where we need to be. Then on page 21, I just wanted to point out, in our special reserves, we have nearly $4 million that we're kind of holding off for remodeling plans. We've received since July of 23, we've received just over $17,000 in gifts, mostly gifts or little small local grants. And a big chunk of that, most of that was from the Friends. They have been very generous to the library. And in fact, we're going to be submitting another wish list to them soon, which I imagine will be another $10,000 donation that they'll make to support different programs and materials, et cetera, here at the library. And then, let's see, that's pretty much all I wanted to highlight in terms of our financial documents here. Any questions?
Just one question. The movie databases, or what do the movies come from? Where do they fit?
You mean like Hoopla?
Canopy or-
Yeah, those are, where are those? They're going to be under, sorry, go back to page 19. Data, let's see. Are those going to be under audiobooks, audiovisual? Are those going to, those are under the database subscriptions, Hoopla and Canopy? Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you can see we have a big chunk of money for adult database subscriptions, 132,000. So Hoopla and Canopy are going to come out of that budget line.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of this when we look at stats later in the meeting. Just in terms of the collection and stuff.
Any other questions about financial reports? Okay, then we'll move on. Number 11, the president's report. The only thing I wanted to mention is that the downtown plan open house is tomorrow night. It's the last one. So it's February 21st from 7 to 8:30 at City Hall in the council chambers. And, you know, just with us being such a big part of the downtown, it's kind of nice to see what's in that plan. So if you're free, that would be a good thing. Anything from the board? Sure.
Just as an FYI, our next month's meeting for the board is scheduled to fall on election day, the primary election day. So I know last time it did that, we moved the meeting, but just throwing it out there, I won't be able to be at the meeting. I'm an election worker, but wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah. I think we should change the date.
To the
Yeah.
following week.
How did you do it last time?
I don't remember, but I think last
Is
time
it
like 2 or
working?
3 of us were poll workers, so that caused an issue.
When is this?
The 19th,
Oh, election day is the 19th, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the following works for me.
So the March,
It's spring break.
It's spring break,
Oh,
I won't be
yeah.
in town. I'm okay, I mean, not that I'm sad you're not there, but I could be the 19th, I can't.
Oh,
do
okay.
The following week, so I don't know.
Does anybody else have a conflict with that date?
I'm
No.
not sure that I'll be back that I'll be here on the 26th. I don't.
No, will you be here on the 19th?
I don't have a conflict on the 19th.
Okay,
okay, so we'll keep it the 19th.
keep it the 19th, just brought it up as an FYI since we did change it
Yeah,
before.
no, that's good.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from the board? Then moving on to directors and librarians reports.
Okay, so as I stated, I heard back from our attorney. Mark Ritzman emailed me, and I basically verbatim repeated what he said in his email. And a lot of this is stuff we already knew, but he does recommend at least a 5-member board, 7 is even better, with a non-voting seat for the library director. 3 members can be workable to get started, which is what we were kind of aiming for, just to get it started, but you want to have 5. They don't have to follow OMA unless there's an entanglement problem, which I don't foresee that being an issue.
OMA being the Open Meetings Act?
They do, yeah, they don't have to follow all of the OMA regulations.
They're not a public body, they're an actual nonprofit.
They're a nonprofit, yeah.
Okay.
However, if you have more than, if you have board members on that board, then that's a problem. So he really recommends that we don't have any library board members on the foundation board.
Any?
Not more than
Not
one.
more than
Two
one.
at the most.
No, that's fine, but just not more than one.
Not more than one. Yeah, if we have 2 trustees serving on a committee, well, I won't go into that because I don't think that's going to be a problem. Okay, so what else does he say? They do have to have their own bylaws. I have some old files that I still have to go through to see if we already created bylaws, but when we get a new foundation board, they're going to want to review those. But they do have to have bylaws that they create. And they can meet once a year. It really just depends on how active they are.
Did he say anything, or did you ask him about the donations, like thresholds? I think that was what we were talking about too last time, because of the donation and gift policy that we said, like, large gifts go to the foundation.
You know, I still need to clarify that, and I'm not even sure if, do you have any input on that, Joe? Does it matter?
Oh, and the money, that was what we wanted to touch on.
I'm sorry?
The bank account.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot. I know.
I think the reason people wind up using the foundation, basically then the funds go to the, what's it called, the Fox River Valley Community Fund,
Foundation,
old
yeah.
second,
Yep.
is to get the 501c3 designation, even though we do the same thing. The 501c, I think, is more comfortable for other people. So the larger gifts, for example, we've had somebody in the past year give 2 $10,000 gifts that went to the foundation, and then they come here. There's a family that every year around Christmas time, the whole family makes donations of several $1,000s, and they designate through their financial people, send it to the foundation.
But they designate that,
Correct.
right? Like the donor. I totally get that. I think we were asking more of like, do we have an internal policy where anything over 300 or 250?
Not really.
Okay.
See, we get dribbles through the circulation when people
Yep.
pay, and they, up it and whatnot. And then somebody will occasionally donate $50 for, what's it called, Born to Read, like that. And those just run through our
Okay.
category here. Mostly it's just less time consuming with the smaller gifts like that.
No, yeah,
Don't really
totally.
impact.
That's, makes sense. So then how do we, without a foundation board, how do we get the money out of the foundation and to the library?
We actually send a communication in writing to the...
Community foundation.
Yes, and they will issue a check.
But the writing, is it coming from like the foundation, or is it coming from the library?
It's coming from the director of the library, asking for the transfer of funds. So...
Which I haven't done yet, because
So...
Kara. Who?
Kara,
Oh, Kara Schuster.
Well,
Right.
she's one of the
She's the foundation.
resistant board
she is the
members.
foundation.
So cleaning up the foundation soon is probably a very good idea.
Absolutely.
Just to mitigate any potentials.
So in order to do that, we need to find at least 3 people who can be actively serving on the foundation board. And that's where I need input from all of you who know people in the Batavia community who might be interested. It would not be the same kind of a time commitment that you are all undertaking. So that would definitely be, I think, a selling point for someone who's kind of, I'm not sure if I want to be on a board, but it's really, we can make it, they can make of it what they want, but it's not as much of a commitment as what you provide.
I think maybe a selling point too is since it's restarting, that they can help determine how much of a,
Right. Right.
quarter
I mean,
instead of monthly.
and I don't know that there's any restrictions. I think I would prefer those larger, anything over $250 go through the foundation once it's up and running. And those small $50 donations can come directly to the library, because a lot of times sometimes those are the book memorials, et cetera.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that makes sense. I'm just worried about getting it out of the foundation. once it goes in.
Yeah, well, so before I was on staff, George was the person who coordinated that.
Right.
And so that would be me, and I don't think that we have that set up yet. I don't think I've officially been added to the foundation.
I thought that was done a couple of weeks ago because.
Oh, is that the paperwork we did? Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we are working on getting me as the person on there, but we do need to have an active board to do the annual report, which is required for the foundation as a 401c3.
Can I ask a question? And then I will put this behind me. Everything to do with the foundation. I don't know why this is bugging me now, but there were 3 people listed on the last documentation. And the person who's listed as the president was the name I had never recognized, and nobody else did either. And you were going to
What was the name?
check about that.
Yeah, I don't have the paperwork. Was it Aria or?
Marla?
No. Let's don't speculate then.
Oh, okay.
We'll look it up and then we'll ask the question.
Okay, sorry.
If it is Marla or something like that, it was someone who was on the committee who no longer lives in the city of Batavia.
Okay.
Do they, but they don't have to.
They don't have to, but she moved out of state and then nobody heard from her again. So,
When that request is made from the library director to the foundation to transfer some funds, does there need to be a specific need attached to that request? Or it's just, I want 50 grand, here's a letter that says.
That's a very good question.
You know, now I'm trying to think. Well, the recent one is the family that gives at Christmas, and they buy the stone, right? Do they keep buying it every year?
The last 2 years, for sure, they've done this now.
Okay, so that they've purchased a memorial stone that goes out here with the funds. I think.
But it wasn't something that was accessed very often at all.
No,
It's mostly just been sitting there.
Right.
Yeah.
when there was a board, there was, during a meeting, there'd be a submission like there was to the Friends. We request X for Lyceum, X for Sundays on stage. Then the board would discuss.
And I think
approve
that-
it.
And preferably it would be the board that would be the liaison.
Absolutely.
And not the library director
Yeah.
for requesting funds. Yes.
okay. So,
Mr. McKean, you have the floor.
I'm still trying to put this behind me, I apologize. Reminded by Megan that in fact we do ask the foundation, because they have a cash balance that's not small from over the years, whatever the projects were. So we have asked them almost annually for funding for the Sundays on Stage, for the new Lyceum, for the
Red Cross.
No.
Stop talking, people.
Babysitting classes that are held in the summertime. And I think that's it.
Well-
I'm sorry, there was a request a year ago for Chalk and Chuck, so.
I think that it's going to be important to kind of have very separate roles between the Friends and the foundation, because I think what the foundation is going to fund for the library needs to be very specific and not overlap with the Friends. And doing a program series, I think, could easily come from the Friends. But maybe a foundation, it would be a bigger picture, project or endeavor. But that's all something that someone on the Friends board could attend foundation meetings. There should be good communication between the two.
That's how I got on the foundation. I was the Friends rep to the foundation.
Because we don't want to step on their toes.
Right.
And I also, we have this money in this community foundation. We pay a fee, don't we, to have it there? Or no? I thought there was.
What they're doing is they're acting as an investment vehicle, and so they invest it, earn income, and deduct fees out of, I believe that's the way it's working.
Okay.
But I've not had access to, I know where they are now, to the reports. I've never done anything with them, the reporting, no responsibility, period. It was all through George. But I'm going to assume that's the way it works, because I've worked with that foundation in the past, other places, so.
Okay. So this is all, all those details are going to have to be worked out with a new board. So I just need some names of people who I could contact. I tried, as we, Joanne Zillman, as we discussed, and she's just not ready to take on a commitment like that so early on in her retirement. But if we can come up with 3 really good possibilities, I'm happy to contact them, but I need your help in doing that because you know Batavia better than I do.
I've solicited a couple of people who are not interested. I can continue to solicit and see if I can find somebody.
Now, if we really, really cannot find board members for the foundation, then that would be a separate discussion. Do we need to continue with a foundation? What do we do with this money if the foundation no longer exists? The Friends are so generous that that kind of supplementing or highlighting special programs and resources that we have here. We don't really need a foundation to do that, but
Could the Friends absorb the foundation?
I don't know.
Wasn't that question asked previously? I mean, didn't we try to co-join or whatever the word is?
George had
with
asked
them
if
at one point?
Friends were interested and they were not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
I think part of it is they have their own set of fundraising and the idea of having a separate, also being responsible
Why
for
is it-
separate fundraisers and things like
Well,
that.
so if the Friends absorb the foundation funds, it would be just,
Absorb the funds, but right.
but
there'd
they're
be
not
no
taking
additional-
on the role of a foundation.
Yeah,
Very
there'd be no
different.
additional roles, I would think, that they
And the
Exactly.
question that George asked was not that absorption, but merging the
Yeah.
taking on.
And I guess other libraries that you've been at over the years, have there been separate friends and foundations, or
I've
was
never
it?
had a foundation at a library I've worked at. I know St. Charles, they have a foundation, and on their website, you can donate money directly onto their website. It goes to their foundation. They have a brochure, they have, information about how to do that.
But do they also have a Friends? They do.
Yeah. I mean, most libraries will at least have a Friends of the library. Not even all libraries have a Friends, because sometimes the Friends can be really hard to keep going. We're really fortunate at
Yeah.
how active
Yeah.
they are.
Joe
Friends.
really wants to talk. He can't let it go.
I spent most of my career in private higher education, and you raise money hand over fist there, at least that's what you try and do. And so when this foundation stuff started coming up, it's nagging a part of me that I probably never let go of, I maybe never will. So I keep lurching with stuff like that. And it strikes me that the Friends really have a very targeted role that they play and do it quite well. And I think maybe trying to muddy that is not realistic at all. I think
Yeah.
a foundation, and foundations, well, in private higher education, you actually have your own development group, and they raise the money.
Exactly.
You don't have a separate necessarily foundation to do that. And that's what they focus on, is trying to get the big bucks to come over the transom.
Yeah, and you're not going to find volunteer board members to do that. That's I think the problem is that we're running into. So what I was saying is that if we know the Friends works, we know it's a separate nonprofit that's not a public entity that can take donations, big or small, book sales or dollars, as long as we have something that's working that is that vehicle to take on donations. I think we just need to be very clear on our website how to donate
To the library.
to the library. And it doesn't need to we don't need to make it complicated by having an additional, if we can't find
Because, currently, if somebody makes that large donation, it's going directly to the library.
Right.
Or if it's not going to the foundation. So it wouldn't go to the Friends.
well, I'm just saying, if they needed it to go to a 501c3 for tax, whatever,
yeah.
and they didn't want to give it to a public body, we have one of those, is what that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Are the Friends 501c3?
I think so.
Yes, they are.
There.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think I'm leaning toward what Jenny is saying, is that if we can't really make this work the way we would like it to work, meaning
Or
the
it should
foundation.
work.
then let's simplify this, folks.
I'm just worried that we're not, when we find people who are going to volunteer their time, they're going to volunteer their time, and it's, like, I think he wrote it in here, within 2 years, we're going to be in the same spot, where they don't really know unless they know their purpose is to find development and find donations and big dollar amounts, not have more book sales.
Right.
Otherwise we'll have another Friends on our hands, which is great.
Right.
But we already have one.
I mean, right. I mean, they could do, I mean, they'd have to do, they could do one
Big
massively big fundraiser a year, or they could scatter some out throughout the year, but very separate from the book sale. Like, it might be, you know, something where people buy tickets to come, there's silent
events,
auctions, there's a
yeah.
whole 9 yards. I just don't know how successful those types of fundraisers are anymore. You know, how much money do you actually make? I don't know.
It costs a lot of money to put them on, too.
Right. You have to get a lot of things donated.
Yes.
And that is a huge amount of work. And staff do not have time for that.
Staff don't have time, and a lot of volunteers don't have that time.
Right.
And there are a lot of ongoing successful fundraisers by other groups in Batavia. So take into account the big picture of others who do successful fundraisers for their causes. And we're going to have another one.
Well, plus we're supported by property tax revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not. So we don't want community members to think we're double dipping.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think if somebody wants to put it in their will, there are ways that you can give money to the library, and it's not about fundraising, it's about the individual's intentions. I want to give this to the library in my will or as a whatever, and that's great. And the foundation can help process all of that, but there's got to be other ways that you can receive that money if you don't have a foundation.
Yes.
And so that is what we have to clarify.
Well, and the problem with the fundraising that the foundation had was when you had a board of 3, you couldn't really put on an event, and you couldn't get volunteers because there wasn't if there's an annual event, then people get used to it. No, I come and volunteer every year. But if you don't have an event, then you can't put it on. Then you can't get the volunteers to put it on, and you can't do that. So it was kind of the catch-22. There were several ideas, an adult spelling bee, and things like that would have been unique. But again, didn't have the people to pull it off. Although part of the thought process of adult spelling bee came up, someone had attended one, was that you could pay a company to put it on like you would a trivia night, that it would cost money up front, but someone else could run the event portion.
But that reminds me of like a parent-teacher association, right? But you have a whole school of parents and volunteers. Like, if you're a board of 3 and you're trying to put on anything, even a pancake breakfast, is going to be hard.
But the foundation also would be the ones who would monitor any kind of these special, you know, I'm going to bequeath so much money to the library.
And that's what I don't want to lose. And I think that's what I'm trying to make sure we don't lose those things, and we get that awareness that we have a vehicle or whatever it is to do those and to capture those Christmas gifts that we know will come in just because we know them.
I just don't know how much of that we get. And so if it's less than $10,000 a year, is it worth it?
No.
If it's,
It is.
I mean, there's, you know, the foundation would need to publicize, and they'd have to put together how, you know.
It's a lot of work.
So it is a lot of work, and it's just not something that staff cannot take on.
I worked in development for Northwestern, and it was relationship building over a long period of time for their foundation. For them, which were huge gifts, $10,000 was penny ante. They were looking for $1 million and up.
But they were not getting it from individuals necessarily?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they were
From
getting
alumni,
okay.
friends of the friends, friends of the family, friends of the attorney, whoever. But it was relationship building, and there were specific staff members to build those relationships with specific groups.
Right.
And I did it with a certain group, and others did it with a different group. And it was long-term.
Yeah.
We don't have that capability, and
I'm not sure we have the need to.
the need.
I think we might be missing something though. I think you brought up a good point about the Friends has a specific mission. We, without seeing the bylaws in front of us, what is the mission of the foundation, right?
Bingo.
Is their purpose to help the library with large projects? Is their purpose to help with if their goal is to help support the new Lyceum, I think they helped with the Bulldogs, right? They had a couple of different big events that they helped with, or big things that happened at the library. So if the Friends are here to help us with day-to-day stuff, the foundation is here to help us with the bigger, the once a year
Longer term.
thing, the once a decade thing, those kind of things. I mean, if we had a strong foundation that could generate donations for us, that would save us from having to ask community for bonds if we needed to put a new roof on. And that's a big ask, right? I mean, having that strong a foundation would be amazing. And I don't want to give up that opportunity. Now, I know it's a lot of work for somebody, and I'm not saying that it's just going to happen. So, but I think that we should continue, I think the foundation exists. I think we should continue to try and find some board members that can create a strong foundation for us that can just help backstop us for things. So, but to your point, it's for people that want to make a donation and don't want to give it to a government entity and want it to give it to the library and feel better about the way they do that. So that's there. And it's just, I think I think we need to look at the bylaws and see what the foundation set up as their goals. And it might be that as it gets reestablished and grows and we go from a couple members back to a full board of 7, they may want to refocus that a little bit. And so
Yeah, I do think the first thing would be revisiting the bylaws to what is this group?
Yeah.
Right, but if we're starting all over from scratch, they might be rewriting those bylaws completely.
Sure. Yeah.
So even the existing bylaws for a defunct group don't really have any weight, I guess. And I totally understand, because I always thought, when I first started here, I was like, well, the foundation really might be great or key to help us raise money for our remodeling plans.
Mm-hmm.
But how realistic is it to expect that we will be able to raise millions of dollars?
It's not realistic.
And that's,
No.
because to do a remodeling project the way we need to and want to, we need several millions. And what we have in special reserves is great, but it's not nearly enough. And there are some things that we really do need to do to update and upgrade our services and what we do as a library that I don't want to, that we have to figure out a way to fund it. I know that there's limits as to how we can fund it. Do you do a bond? Do you do a referendum, which I don't think we want to go that route. At Lincolnwood, before I started, they got a bond to do a remodel of their building, which was originally a, what's that store? First, it was like one of those world decorative.
Cost Plus World Market.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, but the predecessor, they redid Pier 1. It was a Pier 1 store.
Yes.
Thank you. And so they remodeled the interior. It was never meant to be a public library. They remodeled, so it was very dated. It was built in the 70s. It was very dated. And then they remodeled it once to turn it from a store into a library. And then they did this big remodel, completely modernized it and changed everything about it. And they did a bond to do it. It was about a $2.5 million loan that they took out. It's a much smaller building, 1 floor. And then the bond I think it was a 10-year to pay it off. They have like 3 years left. And the payment each year was about $250,000, which when you think about a budget of what ours is 4 point something, that doesn't seem like that much to pay every year for what you get in return. Now, our remodel would cost more than that, so it's a different story. But I'm just saying, I've seen how a bond taking out a loan to do a remodel has been a good thing for that library. And it would, even if we wouldn't even have to levy any higher than we already are because.
Well, we analyzed that
Yeah.
last year, and it was still very, very expensive. And the way
Yeah.
interest rates were, it was just not.
That's true.
it was
All
just
the
not
costs are
right
so
time to
much
take up.
higher.
Because we didn't want to, we're not going to levy for more. We were looking at the bond options, and it was just, it
was
wasn't
too
feasible.
crazy. Well, then so we could do it in stages, but it would take years and years to get where we need to be.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. That's not, but it would be great if we had a foundation to find us $1 million donation to do that, yes.
Let's borrow those guys from Northwestern.
Yeah. Well,
But I think what you're asking, I think maybe we should continue to, is think about our network of people in Batavia.
Yes.
Think about who knows a lot of people who loves the library, but also has, I don't know, maybe PTA or some sort of fundraising experience too, that would be kind of willing to lead something and make it their own.
And I will reach out to other library directors who have done remodels and find out how they funded it. I'm sure it was either a referendum or a bond, but
Oh,
there
yeah.
might be a lot of other things too out there. We'll see.
just to summarize a little bit, then what I've heard is, we all need to think about possible board members to reactivate the foundation. We do want to look at the mission of the foundation to see what its intent was, and then make certain that there's a way to handle 401c3 donations for 501c3 for people who want to
Okay.
make those. And then we'll need to discuss more.
Okay.
Okay.
Staff Development Day was last Friday. It was the first of our 4 times a year half-day staff development days we started. It was a great day. We had a guest speaker, Martina Matheson. Oh, it's not Matheson, it's Matheson, I think. I'm totally mispronouncing it the entire day. Who's worked with public libraries for the last 10 years. She did a presentation on keeping cool under pressure. She had lots of practical tips on things you can do and try when you're dealing with a difficult situation, whether it's with a coworker or with a patron. And the staff gave a lot of positive feedback about, that they really appreciated those tips that she had. It wasn't just talking about how tough it is to work with difficult people. It was giving you plans or ideas on how you could deal with it and put it into action into place. Let's see. And then I was busy in January, out and about. Sorry, that first one should say January 16th, not June.
Time traveler.
So I met with the director of the Depot Museum to discuss collaborating on an oral history project for the city. The idea is it's still in the exploring stages, but they'd like to get some high school students involved who would conduct interviews and do some research to put together, interviewing Batavia residents and put together an oral history project. I shared with them what we had done at Lincolnwood. It was it's called My Lincolnwood Story, and we would interview a resident of Lincolnwood. They would share a memory of something either library related or just growing up in Lincolnwood. Oftentimes they might be interviewed by a fellow family member, or so make it really personal. So they're just kind of early stages of that. I attended my first Chamber of Commerce board meeting as a non-voting member. And I also attended a Lions Club meeting to discuss library services and our plans for the future. And on the 30th January, I attended Rotary Club meeting and presented a short PowerPoint presentation on the library projects and plans that we have moving forward. So they've asked me to, of course, they would like me to join the Rotary Club. I have yet to do that, but I am working out, because I'm on the chamber, and that I don't think they conflict, but they both are morning meetings, so I have to make sure that there's no conflict.
It's an awesome group.
So We had lots of anniversaries in January. Jen Connon, 7 years, Linda Doyle, 15, Michelle Link, 4, Carly, 3, Mary Lou, 3, June, 3, Lisa Moore, who's not here tonight, 10 years. Of course, as you know, she's leaving us. She's moving to Indiana. Her last day is going to be March 30th. She just shared that with me. I was surprised. Ryan is our newest person on this list. He's in facilities, and he's just finished his 1 year. And then Mary Steskel in White is 13 years. So lots of longevity there. So our next meeting is on March 7th, Committee of the Whole at 6:30. And then Liesl is not here. We are short-staffed in YTS because we had one person was out with COVID last week, and then this week 2 people are sick. We're not sure with what. So Liesl's been doing a lot of around-the-clock work and bowed out of attending the meeting, but her report is included in here. But Megan is here and can talk about adult and teen services.
So it's been a great first month and a half. But we actually have a lot going on that we really jumped right into. We've launched 2 new senior programming series. Misty Jump leads both of those, and they're off to a great start. We've had 29 people come to the first 4 sessions. And that's before it's actually been publicized in any print journals or anything. So the next round will be in the Batavian, and I think it'll continue to grow. So we're really excited about that. I love that picture of the group doing their painting. And I sat in on one session. They had a lot of fun playing a card game where they all got to know each other. We've been doing a lot of work on the space. I don't know if you've sort of walked around much lately, but we've really opened up the area to showcase, the beautiful parts of the building that were maybe not, they were a little more cluttered, and we're giving ourselves space to test out teen space things and maker zone things so that in a future remodel we'll know what the community's responding to and what is, what do we want to kind of guide ourselves towards. So that maker zone table, I've seen people out there every day coloring. We have these huge coloring sheets, and we've seen the teens start to hang out in that teen space to the side. It's been really nice. So it's just been really exciting to see people respond positively to all the space. And we are doing a lot of work on the collections to keep that going. So we're going to be doing a significant lead of the area to just really showcase the collections better, make things better for browsing and finding items and having what people are really looking for. So that's what we do right now.
Thank you, Megan.
I do want to say the fireplace looks great. Taking out those extra magazine racks, it just makes that such an inviting space. So nice job there.
Thank you. And then just a few highlights from Liesl's report. So they did our Make It program on January 3rd, and 125 people participated. And then Jolene, how do you use Batek? Batek. I didn't know how to pronounce her last name. She ran the science fair, or she coordinated a lot of the science fair, and we had a new record of 454 people attended the science fair.
It was awesome. I was here with my grandbabies and they loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And then they also recently took all the holiday picture books, not just Christmas, but Thanksgiving, Halloween, et cetera, and they created a holiday collection that is right by the service desk in youth services, and took it out of the main stacks. And I wanted to just go over a few of the stats. Let's see, so patron count, our attendance is about the same this time last year. In January 23, we had 13,060 visitors. We had just over that, 13,287 this past January. Also, our program attendance, even though the final number is lower, it's because we are doing more in-person programming. We didn't have any virtual programming in adult services in January, but we did have 286 people participate in in-person programming. And youth services always has high numbers. So those are still really solid numbers. Let's see, physical collection, page 29. So you can see here between biography, nonfiction, and reference. I'm not even looking at large print because large print covers both nonfiction and fiction. We have a total of 51,237 nonfiction materials, but we only have 29,058 fiction. So our nonfiction is too large, to be honest. We're a popular library. We want to, and our fiction circulation rates are higher than the nonfiction. So we really do want to address that, which is what Megan has started doing with looking at the collection and the space and analyzing what's going, what's not, so we can showcase what people want more clearly. So these numbers I think are really helpful to do that. Also in the circulation rates, so you can see here fiction is about 51% of what circulates in print is fiction, adult fiction, and then I think that's adult fiction. Actually, this might, I don't even know if is that both youth and adult? Yeah, okay, so that's fiction overall. But nonfiction, that's both youth and adult. And that number is slightly lower, but it's about 51% fiction that circulates and 49% nonfiction. Electronic materials on page 30, our audio book, let's see, we're up about 17% from July of 2023. And what circulates the most is the audiobook downloadable e-media library and the electronic book e-media library. Those get really heavy use. And then for our circulation of other non-print materials, still DVDs and video games are the highest, which is kind of to be expected. But, okay. Then on interlibrary loan, I just think this is really significant and I think there's more kind of analysis of this data I'd like to do, but in January of 2023, 4,150 items went out to other libraries in 1 month. This year, 5,787. And so that's a 28% increase. And that's materials that other community members in other towns are borrowing our materials. I would be interested to see how much are we bringing in. That's a stat that we can look at. But I don't want to see that number get higher and higher, because that just means that we're providing resources for other communities. And we want to really focus on our Batavia community more than making sure that we have materials that other people want elsewhere. So that's part of what we're doing in this whole analysis of the collection. Because if we're the only library that has a title, this book only exists at Batavia, that to me is a red flag, because it means that none of the other libraries have bought this book because it's not in high demand. But do we hold on to it because we're the only one? Or does it tell us that we don't need to have this book just because we're the only library that has it? There are other ways we can get it for a patron, and it's taking up valuable real estate for new books that we bring in on a regular rotating basis. So this is all part of the stuff that we have to ask. And some of it is based on stats like circulation rate, and some of it is more, we have to look at the individual item and analyze it more thoroughly that way. But that's all part of it. Oh my goodness, my mess. That's all part of that's all part of what we're looking at.
So,
And now hopefully I can read what else is on here. So for our public computers, this is also, I think, interesting. Our adult computers, back in January of '23, we had 547 users in the month of January. This is on page 31 on the right. This year, we only had 377 adult users on the computers. We're seeing the use of our computers decrease for some reason, which is not a bad thing. It's just something that we're aware of, and it also helps us to rethink our space and how many computers do we have to delegate to public use in that way.
But
Now, youth services went up 83%. I don't know why that is. I think the biggest jump, and it got up to 100 in June and July, summer, they're here during their summer, during the day, but it really kind of went down, then it peaked again a little bit in October, but January it was through the roof. I don't know if that's Christmas break, who knows? But it was not that high last year. Okay, and then lastly, on our database use, so you can see on here, the Hoopla and Canopy are listed on here, but the databases that get the most use, wait, I'm sorry, Hoopla and Canopy are not on here.
Who can read this?
I can't.
Seriously?
I know, it's really small, we're gonna work on that. So Consumer Reports has, and
those help.
Reference USA have the most use, and then also Press Reader and Value Line. So it's a lot of consumer databases that are getting used, not so much, like the Craft database or Ancestry even. So anyway, it's just interesting stats. And we're working, yes, we're refining how we can present this information so it's not so tiny.
So, a couple questions.
Yeah.
Do we know if we're sending out fiction or nonfiction books?
You mean all those interlibrary loan books? I don't know that we track that, or if there is a way to track that.
So when we say what's getting checked out, does that include interlibrary? That's both. So it might be curious to know if our patrons are borrowing, versus what other patrons
Like
are
are our patrons borrowing fiction and we're sending out more nonfiction?
Or vice versa.
Vice versa.
That might help.
Can we
as you-
even get that detailed in a report?
I'll look into it. I know Stephanie's really good at different types of reports too, so we can explore that. I don't know if a report exists with that information. Sometimes we can ask Swan.
Okay.
We're not always able to get what we want, but
Sure.
we can definitely look into it because that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, because if you're culling your collection, you want to make sure you're keeping the books that our local patrons are using most. So that might help that decision. The books that get culled, and I know you guys have told us this in the past, what happens with those, but do those go to the Friends and they sell those? Or do you offer them to other libraries first? Because if we've got a book that gets checked out all the time, but nobody in Batavia borrows it, if it's always going to a different library, do we ask that other library if they want it?
Well, the thing of it is if we have a book that's getting checked out all the time at other libraries, they're most likely they're getting our book through interlibrary loan.
Right.
So those checkouts will show up.
Right.
And therefore, we're not going to get rid of it.
Gotcha. So but you were saying we'll get, so that we only cull books that stay on the shelves for a certain.
So so for instance, in our nonfiction collection, we were looking at books that haven't circulated in 3 years or more.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
And
You want me to
dare I say the number? Go ahead, Megan.
So in a collection that's approximately 50,000 print items in adult nonfiction, or 15,500 had not circulated in at least 3 years.
Oh, my God.
Is there a broad category that would cover, or they
That's all
like?
nonfiction.
Right, but do you break those down like we have 7,000 cookbooks and 1,000 of those don't leave the shelves?
I
Or
can tell
do you
you-
not break it down in that detail?
I'm breaking it down as
Okay.
we're working through it. I can tell you the first couple categories, the zeros, which is like technology, computer items, and a few other random hodgepodge things that just get put in there. I believe we had about 500 items that were on that list. The 100s had closer to 800 or a little over. The 200s were just under 1,000, which is like religion and spirituality. So we will be able to see as we go.
Okay.
Like, there are ways to break that down. One thing that we unfortunately can't get, as you were talking about interlibrary loan stuff, is there's no way currently with the SWAN reports to see, like, in the last, if something circulated in the last 2 years, and we can see that it did, we can't necessarily see where that item circulated because they clear patron data for privacy.
Oh, sure.
While I don't want who checked it out individually, it would be nice to be able to see, like, did it check out here or did it check out elsewhere?
Right.
We've asked, the consortium as of now says no, there's no way to get that. So we're trying to look into different creative ways to kind of get that information a little better. But we do break it down by sections, and we'll obviously want to have, I mean, I can tell you, like, cookbooks are going to be far more popular than
Auto mechanic book. Things that people can look up on YouTube now
Yeah.
are not as likely to get checked out because
Or
Also,
even
some things get
technology
dated.
would be, if it's
Right.
3 years old, it's already dated.
I mean, there was one book that we found that was for an iPhone 6, which isn't even supported anymore. So some of it too, there's other considerations sometimes too of, like, is this information dated? Because even if it got checked out, was it actually helpful to anyone?
Sure.
If it's, you know, so we want to make sure we have an up-to-date, accurate, helpful collection for people in all areas, and demand is a huge part of it too. So we do break it down as much as possible, and we're looking into as much data as we can to adjust to what the community is actually looking for.
sure.
And so the first sweep is kind of looking at what hasn't circulated, but then another sweep at some point will be, well, this may have circulated, but how many times has it circulated? If it circulated once in 3 years, that also tells us this is not something that we have to keep necessarily. Because you have to remember that I don't know the number of books we bring in every month, but we bring in a lot of books every month, new books, new materials. We are running out of space. And we have a lot of space out there, but it's full. And we are buried in shelving. So we really are trying to rethink the collection and how it takes up space, how we use the space to showcase the collection. Because it's very difficult to browse our collection right now for many reasons. One is we've got books on the top and the bottom shelves. I have a hard time with it, that's for sure. I can't, getting a book back on the top shelf because I don't want to read it. And then reading the spine of the bottom shelf. And that if you're a person with any kind of a mobility issue, it's a nightmare. So our aim is to make the collection more accessible in many ways, not just,
Popularity.
Yes. And we want to be able to do more face-outs, because you can browse a collection much better if you can see the cover of a book. Not all of our collection will be face-out, but we want to make it browser-friendly, and right now it's just not.
Cool. Fun data.
Yeah.
I know, I like data, I think it's kind of fun.
I feel like I walk around with, like, stat fun facts for people.
Well, and the interpretation of the numbers is so helpful, I think, for us, instead of
It's,
just
we have to
so
talk
many
about it,
books.
otherwise it's just you gloss over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, great. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Number 13, our upcoming meetings are the Committee of the Whole on March 7th, and then the regular board meeting we're keeping on Election Day, March 19th. Moving on to number 14, adjournment. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
Second by Mary Ann Fasano. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good job.